Hello, everybody, and welcome back with the second episode of the Quarterly Film Empire podcast, in which I will talk about topics related to filmmaking, visual effects, YouTube, and hit film with a guest. Today's guest is Justin Barrett, also known as J.S. Barrett on the forum, from Clever Tagline on YouTube. Now, thank you for joining me today on the second episode.
My pleasure, Jamie. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, some of my viewers might know who you are, but for those who don't, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I'm what some people would probably call a hyphen. I do kind of a variety of things. I'm part performer, part animator, part teacher, marketer, developer. I don't have one single job. I have a whole variety of jobs and interests and things like that. So it's kind of where I fit in, if fit in is even a word for this.
Okay, well, that's a great introduction. So it sounds like you do a lot of things, and I think the first question sort of rolls into that. Kay, tell us a bit about the work that you've done. As your About section on your YouTube channel, Clever Tagline states that you've been fiddling with acting, computer graphics, and storytelling in various forms over 35 years, including 11 years at professional studios as an animator, animation supervisor, and technical director. So what have you done in your work?
Well, I started messing with CG back when I was probably 8 or 9, back when home computers really couldn't do a whole lot. But my first studio job was at Big Idea Productions. I was there for 2 years and worked on initially the 321 Penguins animated series, and then moved over to VeggieTales projects from there. Once I left that, I went to a studio in New Jersey called Digital Production Solutions, or DPS. I was their lead animator for a little less than a year. Then I went from there. I actually began doing freelance work remotely while I was still living in New Jersey for a studio in the Dallas area called Real Effects, and then they hired me full-time after that. So I came on as an animator, did some work as an animation supervisor on a few projects, and then about 4 years into it, long story short, I switched over to be the animation TD, or technical director. So it was my job to support the animation team by writing new tools, supporting existing tools, helping the remote animation staff get up and running on new projects and make sure all that worked as smoothly as possible. Did that for another 4 years, so 8 total at Real Effects. And then I left full-time work in 2012 because I had just a lot of creative energy and things I wanted to do that kind of didn't really jive with sitting at a desk at a day job all day long. So I initially was pursuing acting and voiceover full-time, thinking that would be kind of the way to go. And again, long story short, plans kind of changed as I did some other things on the side. And what I do now is I work part-time with sports teams in the Dallas area, mainly helping them with marketing, entertainment projects. And I also teach a class online for beginning users of Maya, the animation software. So it's been a long,
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, a long kind of weird, twisty kind of path to get from what I thought would be a full-time CG animation career to partly what I'm doing now, which is part animation, kind of through hit film. I still have ties to it through, working with the students online. But my main employment is in a totally different field.
So are you happy with the position you're in and what you're doing now as your job with the sports teams and your YouTube channel?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the YouTube thing, well, first, the job is awesome. I love it. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, but it's just a ton of fun. The YouTube stuff really for me is just, it's just a hobby. It's just something I do on the side because I still love dabbling in, visuals and storytelling and all that kind of stuff. And I have had this kind of in the back of my mind interest in motion graphics for a while, but never really, dived into it very much. And so when I found hit film a few years ago, I realized, okay, wait a minute, maybe I can start, experimenting and learning more about this kind of stuff. So it's just been kind of dabbling on my own time, learning from other tutorials I've seen online, and just a lot of experimentation to kind of get to the point where I'm at now.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing of hit film. It's super easy to just start experimenting with stuff, seeing different effects online, and then you're trying to recreate them. I think that's really fun, and you're actually really able to do that in hit film.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great tool for that kind of thing. And part of what I do is I don't just watch hit film tutorials. I watch tutorials for After Effects as well to see, okay,
Yeah, same.
they're doing things in this way. How can I translate that concept? Oops, sorry for bumping the mic screen. How can I translate that concept and that approach using HitFilm's tools? And that's part of what I like about this kind of thing. I've always been a problem solver. I like taking challenges and figuring out solutions for them and then sharing those solutions with others.
Yeah, that's great. So, I think we can move on to the second question, and that is, what is your goal for the Clever Tagline YouTube channel, as you don't upload as much, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, and you're very active on the HitFilm forum, so what is your goal for the channel?
My goal for the channel has always been pretty simple. I just want to use that as a means to share the things that I've learned along the way. And so as I experiment and come up with new techniques or adaptations of other techniques I've seen elsewhere, I want to share that with the HitFilm community and let them know what I've found. And I'm not saying that the way that I have found to do things is the one and only way or the best way. As always, there are lots of possible ways to get things done in HitFilm, but it's just a means of sharing the things that I come across and things that I kind of play around with. And all the videos are pretty short, mainly because I've got to fit that stuff around my work schedule. So I don't really have a specific release schedule I've been trying to match. I thought initially that I might be able to do, maybe a video. My initial ambition was a video a week, and that turned out to not work out pretty quickly. So I thought, okay, maybe a video a month, and again, it really depends on my work schedule. If I can do a couple a month, that's cool. If I only get one a month done or one every couple months, which has been, pretty recently, then I'm fine with that. I don't really have a target I'm trying to reach as far as, this many videos. I'm not trying to hit a certain subscriber count. I mean, subscribers are awesome, obviously.
Yeah,
but my main
true.
focus is when I want to make the content as useful and obviously as interesting and entertaining at the same time as I possibly can. So it's pretty loose as far as how I view all that stuff.
So it's basically sort of like an online portfolio, because you have some really short videos, like your recent videos, like the recent 4, which is the puppet test, some puppet tests, some clone tools, and snow and that kind of stuff. It's just little tests, but also I really love, which one is it? Animating in layers in HitFilm. It's really useful.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah, that one's kind of something that I realize, okay, HitFilm does have this limitation where, the channels X and Y for position and even rotation, they're all tied together in one keyframe point. You can't split X off on a different time and Y at a separate time like you can in other animation software. So I began thinking, okay, how can you really make this work for you and allow things to be as flexible as possible? And so
I've really thought about that after watching the videos. It's been really useful, and also just keeping that in mind, that that's actually possible with these parenting points. I think that's something really cool.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't have a lot of other things along that same line, but not everything is going to be about, the demos and things that I do will all be in HitFilm, but the principles might be more generic animation principles that could apply to other software as well as HitFilm.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay, so a little bit more on your videos. How do you go about editing your YouTube videos? And then I mean these tutorial style videos, as they often feature these funny little side notes. Also on your channel and your website in general, there are these really funny side notes. Do you think them out, or do they pop up while editing?
they really do come together after editing's done. I go into each tutorial video. My initial plan when I script it out, it's very focused on the tutorial itself and getting the content out there. Once I'm done with the primary edit, then I'll go back and re-watch it and kind of put on my somewhat silly, somewhat snarky hat and think, okay, how can I, where's a good spot? What am I saying that might lead into a gag or a joke of some kind? And wherever possible, I'll try to find a thread that I can run throughout the video, so it's not just a bunch of one-offs, but maybe several. One starts out a certain way, and then that same theme or concept is brought up again later on through another comment, and that tends not to work tends to work out pretty well. But the weird
Yeah.
thing about all those side comments, that totally started out as something unintentional. I did not plan on doing that when I made that first tutorial video about the pinwheel, the whole starburst kind of mix-up thing. It was that mix-up itself, as I was editing and realizing I'd used the wrong term, that got me thinking, okay, how can I get myself out of this corner I painted myself into? How can I work this out? And so, okay, you know what, I'm just going to make fun of it. I'll throw some comments on the screen as though somebody else were watching and commenting, kind of like, the Mystery Science Theater 3000 approach.
Yeah.
And then decided, okay, that kind of works. Maybe I'll keep that going as a running theme throughout the videos, and it's worked out pretty well so far.
Yeah, and I think that it's really good that you stick with that one thread that you just keep on working with, and that makes the joke so much funnier.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm glad those work out for you.
Yeah, and I think many people feel the same way. So a little bit more about hit film. So you teach hit film in some of the tutorials on your channel, and you help a lot of people on the forum. But what do you use the hit film software for yourself?
Outside of the teaching stuff I do via Clever Tagline and tutorials I'm beginning to do with Production Crate and the hit film developers themselves, not a whole lot. I do a few personal projects here and there. I've got some work-related projects, which unfortunately I can't, share online publicly. But it's really pretty sparse. Again, the focus I tend to have is using hit film to learn hit film.
Okay, yeah.
And it's kind of self-contained in that sense. I mean, I do have some ideas here and there for little stories that come to mind once in a while, but mainly because of the work schedule I have, I don't always have the time to really dive in and flesh those out and produce them. But it's fairly easy on the flip side to come up with an idea through experimentation here and there and bang out a tutorial that I can share online. So the tutorials and that kind of stuff really tend to be the focus of my hit film time, but it may come to a point where I do some other personal projects down the road, depending on how my work schedule kind of makes that happen.
Yeah, and that's always how that's most of the time how my tutorials also come to be. Like, I'm experimenting with some new effect or something that I saw online, and then I think like, okay, this actually turns out pretty well. I might make this into a tutorial.
Yeah, it's a great approach, definitely.
What would you like to create for your YouTube channel, like in the sense of a short film, maybe a feature film or a series, and what would it be about?
Kind of going back to what we were just talking about before the break, I don't really have a lot of concepts along that line. Again, my focus right now is just sharing what I learned about hit film. Again, depending on how scheduled and interest in things develop over time, I may start doing some short films here and there, but right now I don't have those kinds of ideas coming to mind, and so I don't try and force it and say, okay, I have to do a short film or I have to do a feature or something like that. Again, because this is all pretty loose, and it's just a glorified hobby for me right now outside of my main work, which is totally unrelated, or kind of marginally related, I should say. But I mean, if that stuff comes up down the road, then I'll definitely run with it. But for right now, I don't have anything in mind in that vein. So it's kind of hard to predict what might come up.
Yeah, that's very true, and you should never like force yourself to create something along those lines, because you notice when someone creates something that's very forced and it just does not really work out.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It really stands out saying, okay, their heart wasn't really into it. I mean, you can tell that wasn't really something that drove them to create that thing. They felt kind of they had to do it because everybody else was doing it. So,
yeah.
But I definitely don't want to kind of fall into that trap, and really want to make things that I have a serious passion and interest in first and foremost.
Yeah, I think that's a great mentality to go through. To go on with the previous question, have you ever created like a cinematic piece or animated piece of your own that is on the internet besides like your YouTube channel?
Not really. I mean, not of my own. When I was back pursuing, acting and voiceover after I quit the day job back in 2012, I As a voiceover artist, I did a few pieces here and there with some animated short films and things along that line. I have done a few little bits on my own that have made it online. A couple years ago, I had this idea for a parody of the Aflac commercial here in the U.S.
Yeah.
And it was tied around the fact that Ben Affleck was going to be the next Batman. And so I took the visuals from that original commercial, the very first one. I only found one really horrible copy of it online. And then I totally redid the voiceover with a friend of mine, redid the sound design, edited the whole thing together, and put that up. So again, it's kind of a funny little personal project.
Yeah.
Outside of that, like I said, I haven't really done a whole lot of stuff of my own total creation. Most of it's been where I've done either voiceover or maybe some animation here and there on some other projects.
Yeah, but I think that I personally think that that's also something that's really fun. Sometimes you just have to do something that's really fun, maybe with a few of your friends, and just do something not because it's necessarily very useful, but just because it's very fun to do.
Oh yeah. In fact, I've actually got a concept in mind that I've thought about for several months now, about kind of another parody style video about something in hit film that just kind of, caught my fancy. And I will produce that eventually. It's just a matter of trying to find the time again and where does it fit in my schedule. And, I've got a certain vision in mind for how I want that piece to come together. And I'm not going to, talk about any more beyond that because I do want it to be kind of a fun surprise when it comes out.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But that's, again, one of the few ideas that do kind of happen as far as, separate projects just throw out there just for fun.
Okay, great. What is something that you want to achieve with your YouTube channel?
One of the main things that I've always wanted to do once I got into hit film and was beginning to learn about what it could do, and started getting the idea for the whole Clever Tagline channel, I was pretty determined, and still am to a large extent, first off, the base element of it is I want to help people understand more about hit film, but especially hit film express. I think that there's a ton of potential in the express version that people might not know about, and they might think that the bigger, fancier effects can only be done in Pro. And so part of what I'm doing with Production Crate, and also as much as I can, also with the hit film folks, is come up with concepts and ideas that show people how Express can be used to really create some unique and different kinds of effects. You don't have to have Pro to do cool looking stuff.
Yeah, and that's also sometimes people think like, oh, this is Express, so I can't do this this particular effect with it. But if you just fiddle around with some different effects, you can most of the times get a pretty similar result.
Exactly, yeah, and it's really about learning what all those pieces are, what the tools are that exist in hit film, and then how you can combine those tools in unique and interesting ways to create certain effects. So yeah, that's part of the fun challenge of it all is, well, first off, learning about the bazillion things that are still in Hit Film Express as a free program, and then thinking about, okay, what combinations can do these new and interesting ideas and visuals and whatnot. That's part of what I like about the whole problem-solving idea is, here's a problem, how can I solve it with the tools I have available? I have to know those tools, so it takes a lot of experimentation, like you're saying. So it's almost a never-ending cycle of experimenting, teaching, experimenting more, learning, teaching. It kind of goes on and on from there.
And I feel that it's in almost every piece of software, like 3D modeling software, editing, Photoshop. If you know your tools, if you know what you're working with, that can also really enhance your creative process. If you know what you can do, then there's also this potential for something new to come out.
Exactly. Yeah, like back in the earlier days, I was learning about hit film and thinking, okay, I got the editing side. I know about editing pretty well through other software, but it's really about compositing, the visual effects tools, really learning about how those work and what they do and how do you best use them. And a lot of my earlier tests really weren't all that great, but then, like you're saying, as you know the tools more completely, it like you said, informs your creativity, because you can put together new things you didn't even know about before.
Yeah. So to continue on this advice journey, the last topic which I want to talk about, which I also talked with the previous guest, Jay from Hitfilm Sensei, and that is, what is some advice for aspiring YouTubers / filmmakers / hitfilm users?
It really dovetails into what we were just talking about. It really comes down to me, experimentation and being willing to play. And, come up with an idea either on your own or something that you've seen online that inspires you, and figure out how to recreate that thing. And, if you're just starting out, it might not be that easy. You might need to watch a few tutorials and figure out how some of the more advanced features work. But for me, that's how I've learned a lot of things over the years, even programming, some elements of animation. Animation I went to school for, but then obviously it's just a lot of practice from there. But taking the time to just sit down and just play with an idea for a while and see where it goes and see what new things you learn along the way. I think that is a huge, huge thing that can help creative people of all kinds, whether they're doing video or audio editing or painting. I mean, I do audio editing and stuff on the side still, and same thing applies there. I just pull the tools open to figure out, okay, what tool creates this kind of effect, this sound concept I'm thinking of here? And sometimes I'll find it on my own. Sometimes I'll watch something somebody else has done and they'll use a certain feature, and oh, okay, that's what that does. Maybe I can apply that over here. But in the end, it comes back to just being willing to experiment and just try new ideas, and not worry about whether or not it works perfectly from the very first time. Often the experimentation process leads you to find new things along the way.
Yeah, very true.
And so that's one of the biggest things I always tell people, even my animation students, be willing to experiment and play with the software and just learn through that process.
And once you experiment and once you get to know those tools, I think you're also able to adapt. Like in HitFilm, I'm able to look at some After Effects tutorials or Premiere tutorials and think like, okay, you have the tools in HitFilm to actually recreate this effect. So once you know your tools well, you're also able to adapt techniques from other pieces of software.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, I was watching something, an After Effects tutorial last night, and the beginning kind of opens up and he gets talking about, okay, you need expressions for this. I mean, okay, fine, expressions. That's like the tool they use to get that thing done. But
yeah,
what HitFilm tools can I use to create a similar look? It might not be driven the same way. It might take a different workflow to get to that same end result. But that got me thinking, and I found, a relatively easy way to pull this thing off, and I'm probably going to share it in a later video on the HitFilm on the Clever Tagline channel.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. So that was the second Film Empire podcast of this year. Now I want to thank you, Justin, so much for taking your time to join me here today. Be sure to check him out and to subscribe to the Clever Tagline YouTube channel using the link in the description. Also, you can find him on the HitFilm forums. So do you have something to say?
Not really. I appreciate you having me on here. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to Film Empire as well. Click the little bell icon to get notified when a new podcast comes out. Be sure to check out previous podcasts which came out in March featuring Hitfilm Sensei. And I'll see you next time with a new video. Bye.